Hi friends, it's Taylor. Welcome back to the channel where I share my financial self-care journey using Monarch Money. I make videos on monthly budget reviews, financial planning, money goals, and other lifestyle content that all connects to my goals of being financially independent. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to join our community by subscribing and hitting the bell. Today we are finally going through my long-awaited Paycheck Planner, which has been months in the making, mainly because I kept playing around with the formatting and then experimenting with connecting to other areas of the sheets, and I eventually realized that this is just going to have to be something that evolves over time. So I am going to let go of my perfectionism a little bit and release this as is. And of course, as you all give me feedback on changes we can make, I'll just update this and hopefully we'll end up with something a little bit more refined. But I think that this is going to be a great starting point. So before we head over to the template version of the planner and enter the data from scratch, I wanted to show you all how I have been using the Paycheck Planner. I thought that it would be helpful to show my information so you all kind of see how I use it, and maybe it can give you some inspiration on how you can use the planner for yourself. So on the very first row of this table, I decided to have a line item for my rollover because I don't get paid until the 5th of the month. So I need to have money left over in my account at the beginning of the month so that it covers me until I get paid. And then I have a row for my paycheck on the 5th, all the expenses in between, and then my paycheck again on the 20th, all the expenses after the 20th, and then I have a line item for my rollover, which will carry over into the next month. And in that next month, this would be the same rollover. So the cycle kind of repeats itself from the beginning to the end of the month. And then at the top, we just have the name of each column. So this would be the date field, aka the day that it comes out. The name would be whatever you want to name that particular entry. So this is where you would type in your paycheck, any subscriptions you may have, your rent and utilities, etc. The amount is pretty self-explanatory. It is going to be whatever the dollar value is for whatever you typed in here on the left. So you'll see that my paycheck is $1627.35. So I typed that in here as a positive number. And then all of my expenses are going to be a negative number. If I double click into this, you'll see that this is actually a -3. Because I am using the accounting number format, it puts negative numbers in parentheses, so I can kind of quickly look at this and know what I'm looking at. Lastly, we have the balance column, which takes the balance that you have on the first day of the month and then either adds any income or subtracts any expenses that you may have to give you a new running balance for that particular day in the month. Now, because the rollover is the very first entry of the month, that one is the only one that is just set equal to this particular one because there's nothing above it to pull from. But everything else, as you can see, pulls from the cell above and the cell to the left. So I think that's enough for the showcase. Now let's head over to the template and talk about how everything works together, as well as some customization options so that you can cater this to your financial situation. So we're here on the Paycheck Planner template, and as you can see, it is pretty much empty with the exception of the first row and the last row, and that is for rollover. I do have a video coming out soon on rollovers, but just for the sake of this video, a rollover is going to be anything that is still left over in your bank account at the beginning of the month or the end of the month, and that can be intentional or not. For the way that I budget my money, I intentionally leave rollover at the beginning and the end of the month. So it was very important to me that I have this space on my planner. But of course, if you do not need to use that at all, you can just delete those rows. To start this process off, we are going to enter in our paychecks. As for my case, I get paid on the 5th and 20th of each month. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my information in there now. First, I'm just going to do this as 1, 2, 3, and just click and drag this to fill up the rest of the chart. And it looks like we have some extras here, so I'm going to delete them for now, and we will have the extra spaces here if we need them throughout the video. So since my first paycheck comes out on the 5th, I am just going to go to the row that says 5 and type in paycheck. and you can see that it immediately turned this row green. That is something that I have as a conditional formatting rule so that your paychecks stand out a little bit more as you're looking at your cash flow. Now, I do want to keep this tutorial part of the video fairly short, so I'm not going to enter in every single bill and expense, and I'm also not going to enter in crazy amounts. So we're going to start with something simple, and we'll just say that this paycheck is $1,000. And then my other paycheck is on the 20th, so we will type in paycheck again, and I get paid $1,000. So to better understand how this balance system works here on the right, we're going to start inputting some expenses so you all can see what the colors and the numbers mean over here. I'm going to say that I have rent coming out on the 1st, and that is $500, but I need to type in -500 because it is something that's being withdrawn from my account. After I type in -500, we see that my balance here is -500. And this is letting us know that if rent came out on the 1st and we did not have any rollover money from the previous month, our account would be -$500. And that is definitely a terrible way to start off the month. So we can use this to inform how much money we need to have in our bank account to cover these expenses on the first 4 days of the month until we get paid on the 5th. So let's say that my rollover needs to be $500. And now this has a 0 to let us know we are still in good standing and we are not in the negative. Now let's do another one. On the 7th, I have a gym membership, and let's say that is $50 a month, so we'll do -50. And you'll see that my balance has updated from the 1,000 that I just got from my paycheck. It subtracted 50, and now my balance is at $950. So I've added a few more subscriptions, and we can see here in this balance column, it did $950 minus 100 to give us $850, $850 minus 60 to give us $790, and all of these cells are still green. But what you'll notice is that once I enter in another expense, you can see that these cells are not as green as they were before. And that is because we have set a particular number in the conditional formatting to start changing colors once it starts to drop below a certain balance. So I'm going to come out of full screen for a second and go to conditional formatting, and we'll click here on color scale, and I'll quickly explain how this works. So your minimum value and your maximum value can't be customized in terms of numbers, and that just refers to the absolute lowest number you could have in your bank account and the absolute highest that you could have. The midpoint is going to be that number where the cells start changing colors if they start to drop below that number. So in this case, because our midpoint number is $800, that means that this cell of $690 and on has started to change colors because $690 is lower than $800. $790 barely changed because it is so close to $800, but let's enter in some more data here on the side so that you can see what those colors start to do. So let's say we also have our electric bill, and that's $120. We also have internet, and maybe that's another $100. And if we add in some loan payments, let's say we have loan 1, and that's $200, you can see it's starting to get really red because your balance is getting close to 0 each time. And let's say you have another loan, and maybe that's another $200. And now we have $70 left, and this is extremely close to 0. So now it's going to be as red as we've made it here in this top one where it says minimum value, which is going to be your 0 point essentially, or anything below 0. Now let's say we have another expense, and we'll just call this a personal subscription. We see that we have a negative balance of $10 because on the 16th we only had $70 left. And then we had a bill on the 17th that was $80, and 70 minus 80, of course, gives us -10. Obviously, we don't want to be in the negative at any point in the month, so this can help us make more informed decisions about how we can move things around in order to make sure we have enough cash flow to cover those expenses later in the month, which I will show in just a moment. But going back to this midpoint number, let's say that we don't want it to start changing color at the 800 mark. Maybe we don't really care about it until it's below 400. So we would update this, And you can see the 400 is good, but now at 270, it starts to change colors and now it gets really red. And the same way, you could also make it higher. So maybe you want the colors to start changing once your balance is below $1,000. So we would update that here and we can see it already starts to change. And I do just want to emphasize that even though I said that these count as expenses, you can put anything that is coming out of your checking account. So this could be savings, as I showed here, or maybe it could be a transfer to your investments. So maybe to your 401k, you want to put an extra $100 a month. Now that we've added all of our monthly expenses to this spreadsheet, we want to start addressing the really low or even negative balances that we have in this column. So let's start here with the expenses that come out before the first paycheck on the 5th. On the 1st of the month, my rent is $500 and I am budgeting $200 for groceries. And I also want to have a $100 cushion just in case something comes up in these first couple of days. So I'm going to adjust my rollover here at the beginning of the month to be $800, which is going to cover my rent, my groceries, and give myself a cushion. And now we can see our balance is no longer negative, but it is still a shade of red because it is lower than that threshold that we set in the conditional formatting settings, which in this case was $800. So it really starts to get in the darker colors of red once it is below $800, which is what we have here. So in this example, if I want to buy my groceries around the 18th of every month, I'm going to be in the negative because all of my other expenses have come out and I really don't have the cash flow to support all of those groceries. So we have 3 different ways that we could address this issue. The first is that we increase our rollover here so that when we are ready to get our groceries on the 18th, we won't be in the negative. So maybe instead of rolling over $800 from last month, we will roll over $1,000. So if I adjust this to $1,000, we'll see that I am no longer in the negative when I get my groceries, and I will instead have $90 still left in my bank account instead of being negative $110. I'm going to undo that, and we'll talk about the second solution, which is just reducing how much we buy for groceries on that day. So if I set this to 0, we can see that I have $90 left in my account that I can use that day. Because we're getting paid on the 20th, maybe we want to go ahead and spend that entire $90 on the groceries. So we would just type in negative 90 here. And now this is set to 0 instead of being in the negative, and we would just have that hold us over for the next 2 days until we get paid again on the 20th. Our third solution is going to be getting our groceries on a different day or moving around expenses so that we have enough money in our account to get our groceries on this day. Maybe we have some flexibility with the personal subscription, and instead of having that bill on the 17th before we get paid, maybe we move this to the 21st after we get paid. So I'm going to type in 21 and hit enter. And then up here, you'll see these little filter icons next to the name of each column. I'm going to click the one next to date and click sort A to Z, and it's going to reorganize the rows, and we can see that it moved the 21st down here. Now, instead of being 110 in the negative, we are $30 in the negative, which is still kind of bad. So maybe we move some things around, such as the gym membership. So maybe instead of billing that on the 7th, we see if we can move it around to the 22nd. So we'll move that. And once again, come up here and sort A to Z, and that moved it down here. And now, when we look at our groceries, we'll only have $20 left in our account before we get paid after we spend the money on groceries, but at least we are not in the negative anymore. And if we look down here below the paycheck on the 20th, we are in the positive numbers for the rest of the month. Now I want to talk about customizing this template to meet your needs. So I am going to come out of full screen. We will select all of the cells, come up here to format and go to conditional formatting, and we will see that we have 3 different rules. So the first one colors the entire row green if it has the text rollover. So if you want to call rollover something else, maybe you want to call it leftover. We would type in leftover and click done. And then once we replace this text here, rollover with the word leftover, you'll see it turned it green again. The next one that we have is for the word paycheck, and that works the same way as the other one that I just showed. So maybe we don't want to call this paycheck anymore and we want to call it income. So we would just replace the word income, and in whatever text box that we have the word paycheck, we would just replace this with income, and you'll see that it updated here. Lastly, we have the color scale, which I showed earlier in the video as we were going through the balance system. The minimum value is going to represent your lowest number. So maybe when you start having a lower balance in that column, instead of it being red, maybe you want it to be blue. So we'll just select this blue here and you'll see that it updates. And maybe when you have a lot of money in your account, maybe you want it to be yellow, or that's a terrible decision. Let's go with purple. And you can see we still have that green in the middle, which is going to be the midpoint. So we will just click this, and maybe we want the midpoint to be like this kind of reddish purple. So we'll go with this one. And now you can see like your highest numbers are in the lighter purple, your middle numbers are in this pinkish color, and then your lowest amounts are going to be in the dark blue. Now I'm going to select cancel that so that it goes back to our color scheme, and I'm going to go back into this. And I want to emphasize again that for your midpoint, this may be defaulting as percentile, but you want to click on this and select number. And your midpoint number is going to be an indicator of when your color scale starts to switch colors in the middle. And it will also be an indicator of when you want to see when your balance starts dropping below a certain number. So I'm going to replace that 50 with 400. And now you can see that for all the numbers that are below $400, they are standing out to us more because we selected that as the midpoint. And now when we are doing cash flow, we can quickly see when we are going to have the lowest amount of money in a particular month. Next, I want to talk about adding columns and rows. So the default number of rows that are here in the planner is 35. But if you want to add more rows, you can click anywhere in the middle of the chart and just right click it and do insert row above, and you'll see that it added something here. You also want to make sure you are dragging up your balance formulas into that cell, so that way as you're adding new information, your balance will continue to update correctly, which you can always double check by double clicking in that cell and make sure that it is adding the cell above and the cell to the left. As for adding columns, it is pretty much going to be the same thing. So let's say that I want to add a column so that I can categorize these expenses as needs or wants. I click on the amount column and I'm going to right click this and insert one column left. You can see that this row is still green because of the conditional formatting that we have set up. And we also have this filter icon, which I will show in a second. And we're just going to rename this to category. And in terms of the category, you can go about this a couple of different ways. You can either just type in the text, so we can say like needs, wants, etc. Or we'll delete this. And if you select all of these cells, if you go up here to insert and then do drop down, now you'll be able to select your options here. So we'll call the first one needs, the next one wants, and let's give them some different colors, and we'll click done. And now when you click this drop down, you will have the option to select the different categories of your choice. And if you ever want to edit these options, if you just click the drop down and click the pencil icon, you'll see an edit button. And when you click that, you can rename these, change the colors, and even do some custom colors here. And if you go to advanced options, you can do even more customization, such as changing the style of the drop down. Now, if you wanted to move any of the columns, you'll see that we'll get this error message because the title box up here is a merged cell. So we are just going to select both of those and unmerge, and maybe we'll just make this left aligned for now. And now I can drag these columns in the different ways that I would like. Now the filters for each column just looks at all of the data that you have in that column and allows you to filter or sort by it. So let's say I want to sort this column from the latest date in the month to the earliest. I would do Z to A. and we'll see we have all of this here. If you are going to sort the date column, I recommend sticking with A to Z so that you can see the earliest date in the month to the latest. You definitely can do Z to A, but you will have to make sure you update the balance formula over here. So this one would just need to be set equal to this cell, and now everything is fixed. But you'll just have to double check and make sure that your numbers are in the right place, because this is designed for A to Z format, so just be mindful of that. So going back to that example I showed before, if I drag the category outside of this green border, you'll see it's not included in this filter. So what you want to do is select all of the cells, which you can manually do by selecting all of them like this, or you can just select the column, and then on Mac you're going to do Command Shift down, or you can do on Windows, I believe it's Control Shift down. Once all of those cells are selected, you're going to come up here to Data and Remove Filter, and with those cells still selected, you'll go up here to Data and then Create a Filter. And now you'll see that it has added the green border around the category column as well, and you can click on the filter and sort this any way that you would like. All right, everyone, that is it for today's overview of the Paycheck Planner. If this is something you are interested in downloading, I'll be leaving the link below in the description, or you can head over to penotpaper.com to explore all of my templates. And as a thank you for tuning into my channel, be sure to use the code YouTube for 10% off your entire order. I understand that this was a fairly quick run through of a semi-advanced template, so if you are a little unfamiliar with Google Sheets or aren't really sure how to use the template, or if you just have questions about it in general, be sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll be happy to help. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.